I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Zee Garcia. What's up?
I'm Sam Healey. Welcome back.
And we're here to talk about GenCon 2015. It's a week later. And GenCon is certainly not a convention where if you are involved in stuff like we were, where you'll be able to play many games.
True.
It's literally impossible if you're
Very
at
busy.
booth and whatever. However, we did get to play a couple games, so I thought we would talk about them. Some of these games are actual games. Others were prototypes of things that are coming out. So this is a chance for us to go over that. Who wants to start? You are.
I'll talk about I guess I could call this game the highlight of my convention, and this is the one that is a finished product and was a highlight, okay? I did play some prototypes which I thought were excellent, and I cannot wait for them to come out. This game's out. It should be available out in store soon, and the game is called Discoveries, The Journals of Lewis and Clark. This is a game put out by Asmodee, distributed by Asmodee, and the game is a dice game. It's a dice-driven game based somewhat on, obviously, Lewis and Clark, but also based on the original game called Lewis and Clark. Came out, I want to say, 2 years ago. And in this one, you are doing a very similar thing than you were doing in the original one, in which you are traveling. In this one, that traveling does not happen on a map, it happens on cards. And so you'll take a card, it tells you have to go through 2 rivers and a mountain. And you use the dice to procure those 2 rivers and a mountain and to hire, to get help, to help you become more efficient at traveling. Once you complete those 2 rivers and a mountain, you take that card, you bank it, you get another card. This one needs 4 mountains. And that's basically the game. But it's a nice dice allocation, dice management game with a couple of interesting twists where in which, for example, you can use your opponent's dice in the game. You can, on your turn, instead of doing an action, you can say, I'm resting this turn. And you get a bunch of dice. And in those dice might be some of your opponent's dice, which you can then use for yourself unless they rest and recall their dice, at which point they go away from you. So you got to be careful. If you're taking them, spend them soon. Use their dice first, or they might pull them back. It's got a nice rhythm to it. I really liked it. Artwork is gorgeous. It just works really well. I was very pleased with it. Discoveries.
I'm very interested in that one. All right, the first one I'm going to talk about is from Asmodee. This one is coming out very soon because I have a production copy of it, and they were handing out a lot to different reviewers, so I know it's really soon, and that's Mafia de Cuba. Mafia de Cuba. And this is a game which is in the werewolf category, and you have a cigar box. And one person is chosen to be the godfather or the capo or whatever. And so they get this cigar box, and inside are 15 diamonds. So they're going to take out some of those diamonds, so they know how many diamonds that the game starts with, maybe 12 or whatever. They then pass the box to the next person, and that person is going to either steal some diamonds or they're going to take a role token out. There's some tokens in there, different roles. If you take a role, that's who you are. You're a loyal henchman to the boss. Maybe you're an FBI agent. Maybe you're something else. There's different roles that can be in there.
Street urchin.
Well, if you want a role and there's none left, then yes, you're a street urchin. And so when it gets back to the boss, he looks and says, okay, he started with 12 diamonds, now there's only 8. That means people stole 4 diamonds. He just has to basically figure out who those people are. Now, people are going to give him information. I'll say, hey, when I got the box, there was only 9 diamonds left, and these rolls were left. And you have to convince the boss that you're one of his loyal henchmen. And so he's going to accuse people and say, you stole diamonds, and if so, they show they stole diamonds. If they are loyal henchmen, well, then he messed up, and if you mess up so many times, depending on the number of players, then you lose. If he picks the FBI agent, then the FBI agent wins. So, or the CIA agent, you know, if there's multiples of them. So you have to be careful because that person's trying to get picked. If the mob boss picks incorrectly and they lose, then whoever took the most diamonds wins. All right? If he picks all the people with diamonds, then he and the loyal henchmen win. And if he picks the FBI or CIA agent, then those guys win by themselves. It's really interesting. It's a role selection game, but you get to pick what your role is. Kind of, sort of.
It sounds from when you hear the game described, you go, it doesn't sound like it's gonna work. But it's about what's not written in the rule book. I think we did not get a chance to play this. We saw it being played, Sam and I, but It's the game that if you listen to the way it would work, you go, okay, sounds okay. But a group brings this game to life, it seems. We saw it being played, and everybody was very into it. It seemed like the game works really well.
Oh, I really liked it, because you got to watch what you say, because I'll say, hey, there was 10 diamonds in it when it got to me, and then he says, wait a minute. You know, when I got it, there was only 8, so that means Tom took 2 diamonds. I'm like, no, they're lying. And, you know, there's...
Right.
So and the capo's trying to pick the person who's lying. But I'll be like, hey, look, I'm a loyal henchman. I got your back, you know?
Right.
So it's very intriguing in that regard. You're not necessarily... You get to make a choice in this game. You don't... It's not like Werewolf where you get the card and you're like, I'm a villager. All right, well, whatever. That's what I am.
Sure.
Or even like you're playing Battlestar Galactica and you're like, oh, I'm a Cylon. I didn't want to be a Cylon. In this game, you can choose most of the time. Sometimes you're stuck. But most of the time, you can choose who you're helping out.
That's great.
So I find that fascinating. A lot of fun. That's Mafia de Cuba.
Cool. All right, the first game I'd like to talk about is a prototype version that was showed to me and Zee by Bruno Catala at the Asmodee event. And that is a game called Raptors. Now, Raptors is
singular, I think. But
yeah, whatever. Anyway, it's a 2-player game, and one player takes the role of a team of scientists that are trying to go in and capture either the mama raptor or 3 of the baby raptors, and for whatever, studying, what have you.
That was me.
And then another person takes the role of the mama raptor and her, I believe there were 4 babies. Maybe there were just 3. I think there were 4.
There were definitely more than 3. Yeah.
I think there were 4 raptor babies, and the mom has a 2-pronged mission: save her babies, at least 3 of them, and get them off the board, or kill all of these scientists so that there are no scientists on the board at some point in the game.
Right.
And so that's
Sam.
That's the whole point. So we each have a deck of cards labeled 0 to 9. Both of us, and on those cards have special abilities, except for the 9 doesn't have any special ability. We both take the card and play it face down, and then we flip over simultaneously. Whoever has the lowest number gets to do whatever special ability their card has. Whoever has the highest number gets to do a number of actions equal to the difference between the 2 numbers on the board with their pieces. And so it just has a really cool back and forth mechanic. It's a very solid 2-player game that has a really cool theme that immerses you into that theme. A lot of onboard play. It was a prototype version, so the graphics weren't that great, but if it's anywhere close to that, I'm thinking production quality anywhere close to that.
Sure.
It'll be a knockout of the park.
And the artwork was done.
Yeah.
And it's Vincent Dutrait artwork, and it is spectacular. Like everything else that Vincent Dutrait has done, the game has a great look to it.
Yeah.
You know, but really it's a nice mix between what boils down to abstract-ish play with a great theme that elevates it from that.
Yep.
Because the board is really, it's a series of circles and a grid formation, you know, but thematically it really elevates it.
Yeah.
You know, there is little hills that the characters have to walk around, and there's a lot of skulking and stalking going on. The game works well. That theme...
The difference between how the raptor mom moves compared to how everybody else moves. She's really fast, and she can get around to different parts of the board, and she can call her babies to where she is, and it just... The theme really worked well with this, with all of the mechanisms that it enlists. So that's one to put on your radar and keep strongly on your radar. I think they were talking, Q1 next year?
I think so.
Something like that.
I think so.
It wasn't in the very near future, but it wasn't very far away either. So keep that on your radar. Raptor by Bruno Catala.
I agree.
All right, let's do one more game. What do you got?
Okay, sure. I'll do the Grizzled, which is a very tiny little game, co-op card game put out by Cool Mini or not. And in this one, you are cooperating with the other players in order to basically survive the war. And the game has very interesting artwork, has a great look to it, has an interesting theme, which it tackles in a unique way. It's technically a war game, but it doesn't play like what you would think a war game would play, how it would play. And it's a game of sort of avoiding set collection. It's a game in which you are going to be playing cards to the center, a common area, no man's land, the game calls it. And you are avoiding having 3 of the same symbol or 3 of the same landscape type. So snow, things like that. And then the other ones are shells and gas masks, things like that. And on your turn, you pass out a certain number of cards, the leader for the round. You play cards. At some point, people go, ooh, I can't play anymore. Or I will make that happen. 3 of the same, which is very bad. And so you pass for the rest of the round. You pick a token, put it face down in front of you. That is a support token. And once everybody's passed, 2 things happen. Everyone flips their support token. If we picked one person as having more support than anyone else, they get a bonus. They get to get rid of some bad cards that have been accumulating in front of them. But it's silent, which is interesting. You have to sort of feel out where people are going to be helping. Second thing that happens is, depending on how many cards people did not play that you held on to, you're going to move that many cards from a reserve deck to an active deck. And if that reserve deck runs out before you burn through the active deck, you lose the game. And this game is tough. This game was really difficult. In fact, we played with an introductory rule that says, oh, this icon, ignore this icon. And we still lost. So it's a tough one, but it's a great, simple co-op game. It's that sort of Hanabi sort of co-op, where it's like, hey, it's a deck of cards, that's it. But it's a co-op. And that's really cool. It's hard to pull those games off, I think. And this one does it and has a nice vibe to it. Check this one out, the Grizzled. I like it.
A game that Sam and I got to try out, the beta version of Runebound. This is the 3rd edition of Runebound, where the 2nd edition came out 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was kind of done with the 2nd edition because I liked it a lot. It was very fun, but if you play with more than 3 players, it lasted forever. It already lasted pretty long with those, and had kind of this 10-sided die combat system, which was interesting but lengthy and involved. The Runebound, this is the same thing. It's still, you roll dice to determine your movement, although instead of using weird symbols like the 2nd edition did, now they match the colors on the board, so it's really easy to do. Okay. Mm-hmm. You move, and then you basically get 3 actions. So you're usually going to move and do something. Many of the things that you do takes 2 actions. So you go here, you might fight someone, you might go here and do an event, and you have different stats sometimes that will matter, and sometimes you draw a card to see if you've accomplished a goal or what have you. But sometimes you fight. And to me, that's the kind of the core of the game. And when you fight, the person next to you is the person you fight against. They control the monster. And the way that fighting is it's a bunch of tokens. And you start with a certain number of tokens that each character has. And each character has different tokens with different symbols. Yeah. So you flip these tokens, and they'll show different symbols. Some might attack, some might be defense, some might be that you flip another token over, one of yours or someone else. So you use some of your tokens, they use some of theirs, and you keep going back and forth until you've used all your tokens. And then you fight another round, and you keep going until someone loses. And dying in this game is not a horrific thing. It's kind of it's a minor restart type
Respawn
thing. Right. But what's really intriguing to me is you can buy weapons, which give you different tokens. You have enemies, which will interpret some of the symbols on the tokens. They're surges, the same things they have from Descent. That different enemies will do. So you'll fight different enemies, and halfway through the game, the enemies get a lot harder.
Yeah.
And the game is, our game was a little bit long because we were all learning everything.
Right.
But I really think a full game of this looks like it will take 2 hours. It doesn't seem like it'll be that long.
Pretty close.
Because once you know what you're doing, it will go well. And I liked the miniatures. I liked the artwork. I liked everything. I love the token combat. My only minor problem there is throwing a bunch of tokens is not as easy as rolling dice. It just isn't.
Sure.
You can shake them up and throw them. It's not like it's hard to do, but it's just not the same. Dice you to go.
It's a different tactile feel.
Right, it is, and some people may not like that, but the actual using the tokens, you're like, ooh, this one will double one of my other tokens. Ooh, I'll use that with this one. Ooh, I can flip a token. Which one will I flip? And the tokens have little symbols that shows what's on the other side. Combat's not that complex, but it seemed like it was pretty tactical.
Yeah, it was.
I'm really excited about this one. It looks good.
I was on the fence with the whole token thing when he first mentioned it. I was ready for a dice chucker. Be honest with you, when he came up there, and then he laid out the board, and I saw what it was. I wanted to see some dice at the table sometime, but when he showed us the token and you're casting or you're chucking the tokens, I was like, I don't know how that's gonna play out. But after a while, after doing it a few times, it really is a pretty cool mechanic. I mean, another person was, I can't remember who said it, but it's basically a two-sided die. That's pretty much what you're doing. And when you look at it that way, okay, I can swallow it a little bit easier. You know, that's the spoonful of sugar, so to speak. Makes the medicine go down. But I enjoyed Runebound 3rd edition, and I'm looking forward to a production copy of it and try to get a whole game in.
I would imagine that will come out Q4 of this year. All right, last one for you.
All right, my last one of the game. Probably the most memorable experience. I played a lot of really cool games. Some of them are still pre-Kickstarters and that type of thing. But the one that really kind of sticks out in my mind is being able to play Heroes of Normandie with Clem, the designer from Devil Pig Games. I had read the rulebook a couple of times and was still fuzzy on how the game actually played out. Now, I read the books in a car traveling, so maybe that has something to do with it. But Clem was able to we laid out a scenario, and he was able to walk me through a bunch of stuff. Stuff that I knew already, but I just didn't understand how it played out in the actual gameplay. So we played a scenario where I had my force, I played the Americans, and he played the Germans, and we were both trying to gain control of a house where our units wanted to stay the night. And so the whole point of the scenario was I had to stay there the entire time, and if there was any time where I was not in the house and Clem's forces were in the house alone, boom, game's over, he wins. But if I continue to have a presence in that house until the end of the 6th round, then I win. It doesn't matter if he has units in there with me or not. And it was just a really cool scenario where we were coming at each other. He had an MG42 across the courtyard that was just mowing down my troops, and I had to move my tank in and start hitting his MG42 nest. It was a really cinematic experience. There was a lot of cool things, and it came down to my lieutenant rushing the house, and he was able to stay there. Clem kept throwing grenades into the house.
Well, you were telling me that he was just like chugging them in there with his own guys in there, right?
Because he had 2 units and I had 1. So he kept throwing grenades in the house, wow. Trying to take me out, but he was taking his own units out at the same time. So it was just a really fun experience. I had a great time playing, and I really appreciate Clem taking the time to do it. But just a really memorable experience. So that was Heroes of Normandie with Clem.
All right, well, those are some of the games that we played. You'll probably hear about other ones as time goes by, but it was a lot of fun to do that. We'll be back in one more video talking about our overall thoughts on GenCon. Until then, I'm Tom Vasel.
Zee Garcia, thank you.
And I'm Sam Healey. See you on the flip side, folks.
Woo!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.